Arm locks. Arm locks are one of my favorite techniques. At first I found them very difficult to do, but that's mainly because my timing wasn't so good, my hip positioning wasn't good, my mechanics weren't good, and my awareness was low. But other than that, everything else was great. So the most important thing, I would say, is getting the right angle, getting perpendicular to your opponent. So a great way to practice the arm lock is simply grabbing on top of the sleeve, that same side. I'm going to put my heel on his hip. Now I can push myself, but I'm not quite perpendicular. So I like to dive my hand underneath the hamstring. So as my heel pushes me part of the way, my hand can pull me the rest of the way. Lock behind the armpit with one leg, the other one goes over the neck. Now I need to lock down very tight here, and I can roll out to my elbow, trap the wrist, and raise my hips for the tap. Foot on hip, hand dives underneath, simultaneous motion. I'm turning, lock, and then lock this one down. I don't want to cross my ankles at this point. Let's have independent leg action, and then I can come up, raise my hips, get the tap. Bent arm lock from the guard, or the kimura. So this is a high percentage technique. Once you tap into seeing it, you'll see it everywhere. You can get it from all kinds of positions, and it works at both the white belt and the black belt level. So, most important thing, palm on his wrist. 2, uncross my ankles. I have to be able to move my hips back so I can sit up effectively. Wrap my own wrist. Some people advocate using their thumb. I use the monkey grip, the thumbless grip, for almost everything. It's a personal preference. Drop my elbow. Use my body weight to off balance, and then I drive my hip once, twice, pull in with my heel as I rotate my body. Palm on the wrist, uncross my ankles, move my hips back, sit up, wrap my wrist, drop my elbow. Shoulder on the mat, I move away once, almost, twice is just right. Pull in with my heel and then rotate. I don't want to do it with my arms. I want to pull that elbow into my chest and then rotate my upper body as one unit. The telephone arm lock is a perfect follow-up for the kimura. So it's very common for them to, once they feel that pressure mounting, they can't have their arm bent any longer and they straighten it, which feeds right into our plan. Uncross my ankles. I sit up. I'm breaking him down here. He straightens his arm. I allow that to happen. I catch it in between my shoulder and my neck. Move my hip out, foot on the hip, knee on his shoulder, and then I reinforce my elbow as I do a side crunch. Do not resist his resistance. Allow it to happen. Just guide it into position, move my hip out, foot on the hip, knee on the shoulder, and then crunch. Whatever resistance they put up, flow with it. Here's an example. I go into the kimura. He doesn't like it. He straightens his arm. Telephone arm lock, I'm trying. He slips that out. I catch it in my other arm, and now I just go for the straight arm lock by throwing my knee over the shoulder. TJ pushes up. I roll my hand down. My thumb goes inside of his armpit. On the other arm, my thumb is going to point up. Now I'm able to transfer my weight into my hands. So from here, I can jump to my feet. Next stage is I transfer and then I turn slightly. So I transfer my weight, but then also turn. Again, we're going for that perpendicular angle. Final stage is I transfer the weight, I turn, and then sit right back into the arm lock. TJ pushes up, arm goes over, arm goes under. The overarm, that's the arm that I'm going to be taking. Now, it's possible you could do it this way. I find this to be a little bit more female-friendly, a little bit easier on your opponent if you're going to do high repetitions, and I can also learn how to transfer my weight to just one hand. Say if TJ were to bridge in that direction, I can transfer my weight to the hand and then come into the arm lock. So as he pushes up, transfer the weight, swing into position, and take the straight arm lock. We can also do this arm lock in a segmented fashion. So as TJ pushes up, I go into my position. Now I just slide my knee up. I'm blocking him from bringing his elbow back. I flip my leg, bring this in tight. My elbow comes and wraps his wrist. I transfer my weight not only to my thigh, but to my hand on the opposite side of his body. Now I can really easily bring that leg around his face and then sit into the arm lock. TJ pushes up. I slide that knee forward, flip my leg. Trust the weight on that thigh as I wrap his wrist, bring the leg around his head, and then come into position. Very important to have good mechanics as you do your arm lock. So as TJ pushes up, I come up into position, I flip, everything is tight, everything is tight. This is tight, there's no space. Offensively, I want to always eliminate space. Wrap his wrist, I counterbalance my hips with my head so that I'm tight as I loop that leg around. Now, I can't have my knees opening. I can't have my heels not pulling. I need to pull my heels to my butt, knees together, wrap that wrist, and then take the arm lock. The spinning arm lock for mount is a great sensitivity exercise. So rather than waiting for somebody to hold their arms up and you to swivel into position, I put my chest low. As soon as I feel him lifting, that's when I go into the position. So as soon as he pushes up, that's when I respond. And then from here, I scissor my legs, come back into the position, and we can repeat. TJ has his arms in position. I take my palm, put it on top of his wrist. Other palm goes on top of the elbow. I can use my arm strength here, but I prefer to use my body weight to drive his wrist back into his shoulder. And then as soon as I can, I place my elbow next to his neck and ear. It's very important. I slide my arm underneath his elbow, grab my own wrist. Now I slide my left leg back so I'm not blocking myself. Bring his elbow down to his hip, but note that the back of his hand is still on the mat. Then I lift up. the range of motion increases as his elbow is higher on his body. So here, big range of motion. As I pull it down toward his hip, it gets smaller and smaller. Your opponent will definitely try to resist that technique. One way that he can get safe again and negate your technique is to bring his elbow back into a center line. Note that as you get further and further away from your center line, you get weaker. So he tries to bring that elbow back into his center. That's a perfect opportunity to transition to a straight arm lock. I'm pushing down. I'm going into the technique, and then TJ pulls that in. That is when I pivot. Again, going perpendicular to my opponent. Push down. I wrap up. He pulls. As soon as he does, I put my heel in his armpit and then pivot on my knee. Now I lean forward, putting my weight in my right leg, and then coming out into the straight arm. The minute he pulls in, I have to be able to capitalize on that momentum that he generates. So here is the real motion. As he pulls in, I pivot on my heel and also my rear knee. I don't need to slide my knee up to his head in this particular instance. As he pulls up, I'm here. Then I really weight my right leg and also roll this down for a little bit more stability. As the leg swings over, and then I can come back to a straight arm. The other common form of resistance is for him to reinforce his own arm, and that works out even better for us. So let's take a look. I'm pushing down. He doesn't like that one bit. He reinforces his own forearm. Then I pivot into position, hook underneath his arm, continue to weight my left palm, pinning his hand in position as my leg swings over, and then I can extend into the arm lock. If I'm here, I need to keep that weighted. Dive underneath, I can grab my own lapel if I need to. Hips forward, head forward, and then extend into the tight arm.